Today, we're diving into the story of Mary, a figure whose entire life is often seen as this incredible symphony of faith. We're going to look at how a single yes from a young woman in a village most people had never even heard of is believed to have kicked off a series of events that would change the world forever. Let's jump in.
So, picture this. This story starts in a world that feels like it's holding its breath, just waiting in the dark for a promised dawn. Ancient prophecies, like the one you see here, spoke of a woman who would play a central role in a huge divine plan. But this massive, cosmic story, well, it actually starts on a very small, very human scale. Not with kings and queens, but with the quiet prayers of a couple who were completely heartbroken.
And that's where we zoom in, to the very personal beginning of this whole epic tale, the story of Joachim and Anne, Mary's parents. You know, their personal struggle was kind of like a small-scale reflection of the whole world's great big hope.
This slide just nails the contrast at the heart of their story. On one hand, you have the shame and sorrow they felt. I mean, in their culture, being childless was seen as a curse, a source of deep personal grief. But on the other hand, you have this brilliant, glorious answer to their prayers. It's really the first taste of a theme we're going to see over and over, something their own daughter would later sing about in the Magnificat, how God hath regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. They weren't just promised a child, they were promised the new Ark of the Covenant, the living, breathing vessel for God's presence on earth.
Right, so from the very moment of her birth, Mary's life is portrayed as something truly extraordinary. She wasn't just some kid who was prayed for. She was a child set apart for a singular divine mission, right from her earliest days.
Get this. According to tradition, something pretty amazing happened when Mary was just 3 years old. Her parents bring her to the temple, as you can see here. But instead of being shy or needing help, this little toddler supposedly walked right up the 15 steps into the most sacred part of the temple all by herself, with this confidence that just left everyone there completely stunned.
And this moment, it's absolutely packed with symbolism. The high priest, supposedly inspired by God, takes her into the Holy of Holies. Now you have to understand, this was a place so sacred he himself was only allowed to enter it once a year. The message here is incredibly powerful. She wasn't just visiting the temple. Tradition says she was the new living temple, the one preparing to house God himself. And as she got older, her dedication just got deeper. At 12, she makes a vow that was totally unheard of for a woman in her time and place to remain a virgin, completely dedicated to God. This, of course, created a huge problem for the priests. So, how did they solve it? Well, with a divine sign. A dry wooden staff belonging to an elderly carpenter named Joseph miraculously bloomed with flowers. This showed he wasn't meant to be a husband in the ordinary sense, but the guardian of this incredible mystery.
So you can see all of this, her whole life, was leading up to one single pivotal moment. In this tiny, unassuming village of Nazareth, the barrier between heaven and earth was about to be completely torn open. So when the angel Gabriel shows up and gives her this news that she's going to have a son, her response isn't doubt. Not at all. It's actually a really profound theological question. When she asks, "How can this be?" she's basically reaffirming her vow. She's asking, okay, how does your plan work with the promise I've already made to you, God?
And the angel's answer? Wow, it changes everything. This wasn't going to be a normal birth. As you can see, it was going to be a direct act of God himself, a moment where the power of the Most High would make the absolutely impossible possible.
Okay, so here's the absolute key. It all hinged on her consent, her yes, her let it be. And with that word, the Word of God took on human flesh inside her. The source material uses this incredible metaphor. Her womb became a second heaven. This is the ultimate example of what she would later say in her song, "For he that is mighty had done to me great things, and holy is his name."
This amazing divine event then kicks off what you can only call a divine drama, full of paradoxes, starting with an incredibly humble birth and a very dangerous escape. I mean, just look at these contrasts. They're mind-blowing, right? The creator of the universe is being kept warm by the breath of animals. The bread of life is lying in a manger, an animal's feeding trough. It's like her song, the Magnificat, is playing out in real time. He hath put down the mighty from their seats and exalted them of low degree. The King of everything arrives not with power, but in complete and utter humility.
And the drama just keeps going during their escape to Egypt. Coptic traditions are filled with these stories. They say that as the Holy Family entered Egyptian towns, these huge stone idols of their gods would just crumble and fall to pieces. And in the middle of the desert, springs of fresh water would burst from the ground. This wasn't just a family on the run, it was a divine visitation, proving what she prophesied. He hath showed strength with his arm, he hath scattered the proud.
Now, as Jesus' life moves towards its climax, Mary's role kind of shifts. It becomes one of quiet strength, really powerful intercession, and ultimately shared suffering.
The story of the wedding at Cana is like the perfect blueprint for how she acts as an intercessor. Notice the simple steps here. First, she sees a problem. These people are in need. Second, she brings it to her son. She doesn't tell him what to do, she just says, they have no wine. And third, she steps back and tells everyone else, just do whatever he tells you. What's so amazing is that even though Jesus says, my hour has not yet come, he does it anyway. Her quiet, compassionate request was enough.
And then we get to the cross. While everyone else was fleeing or screaming in despair, the narrative says Mary stood. She didn't collapse. She stood there with the dignity of a queen. This was the moment that old prophecy was fulfilled, that a sword would pierce her own soul. She was right there, participating in the suffering, and in doing so became, in the eyes of tradition, the mother of anyone who suffered. So, the final chapter of her story on earth isn't really an ending at all. It's more of a transition from her earthly life to her coronation as the Queen of Heaven.
Tradition holds that when her time came to pass from this world, all the apostles were miraculously brought to her side. After she was laid in a tomb, the apostle Thomas, who was famously late for everything, I guess, arrived and wanted to pay his last respects. But when they rolled away the stone, her body was gone. All that was left were the burial cloths and the beautiful scent of incense. The belief is that her body, the Ark of God, could not be allowed to decay and was taken, assumed, body and soul, straight into heaven.
But her story and her role as a powerful helper doesn't end there. Not even close. Let's fast forward a bunch of centuries, all the way to 10th century Egypt, where her influence was supposedly demonstrated in the most public, breathtaking way imaginable.
The ruler at the time, the Caliph, issued this insane challenge to the Coptic patriarch. It was based on a line from the Gospels. He basically said, if your faith is real, prove it. Move that mountain over there. The entire existence of the Christian community in Egypt was hanging in the balance. So after 3 straight days of the entire community praying and fasting, the Virgin Mary is said to have appeared to the terrified patriarch. And her instructions are it's the theme of her whole life, right? Echoing her own song. She doesn't tell him to find a powerful king or a rich merchant. She tells him to find a humble, one-eyed tanner named Simeon. Once again, God was going to exalt them of low degree.
And the story concludes that through Mary's intercession and the prayers of the faithful led by this humble man, the entire Makata mountain lifted up, trembled, and moved 3 separate times right in front of the Caliph and the astonished crowds. It was this incredible public miracle seen as the ultimate fulfillment of her own prophecy. Behold, from henceforth all generations shall call me blessed.